Hello, Erica, and welcome to the Storied Arcs podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited to dig in. Our specialty is indie and creator-owned comics, but I think you'll probably discover throughout the course of the discussion that Alex and I have gotten our hands on most everything you've written, or at least what's available. But we'll start with Bylines and Blood, and I think, Alex, you got the first question.
Yeah, I guess just from the start off, I wanted curious as to how this idea came about. Specifically, how did the team come together? How did you get connected with both Van Jensen, the co-writer, and also Aneke, the artist? Where did this idea come from? Is it something that an idea came and then a team formed around it? Just what were the origins of this book specifically?
So Van had been talking on Twitter about how, I think it was one of the Green Lantern books that he had written, there was a scene that took place in a comic shop, and he thought it was very fun to, you have the new comic book day wall, and he thought it was very fun to make up titles for all these little comics. And one of them was Lady Dick. And I said, and I responded to the tweet, I was like, I would totally write a Lady Dick book. And we jumped into DMs and we were like, there honestly could be something to this, like this idea of this like hard-boiled Sam Spade kind of detective and everything. And we just started riffing on that. And, and we actually were working on this before COVID.
Okay.
So the fact that we talk about a pandemic, everybody was like, oh, it's COVID written. Yeah. This idea actually came well before COVID.
That was going to be a question as well about the timing of the creative process. Yeah. Okay, so
this happened, I would say spring 2019 is when we started really formulating everything.
A solid year before the world fell apart.
Yeah, exactly. And so we pulled together and we figured out like who she was, like what she sort of stood for. And Van actually had been a crime reporter previously in his career. So he sort of brought this like reality to it. And then we were talking about artists and, who would we want to be able to capture this grittiness, but also show that there is these like bits of hope. And I had worked with Aneke many, many moons ago on Swords of Sorrow, which was a project with Gail Simone.
Gail Simone, yeah.
And I was awed by her art back then. She was, I mean, I'm awed by her art anyway, but she really did a great job on that. And then she worked on the relaunch of Red Sonja for Dynamite, and that I also lettered. So I was very familiar with her work. So I reached out to her just on a whim, and I said, look, I believe she was working on Catwoman at the time. I was like, I don't know what your schedule looks like, but Van and I would love to get on a call and just talk to you. And we jumped on a call, and I had met her previously, and I knew that she was, very cordial and very lovely person. And so we got on a call and we talked, and, we sent her ahead of time, sort of the general gist of who the character was and things like that. And she says, I really love this. Like, I love the idea here. I love the idea of having a character who, having a close relationship that wasn't a sexual relationship, the relationship between her and her best friend who, her accountant.
Slash not assistant.
Slash not assistant. Fucking Joe. And so I loved having that relationship. She loved having that relationship. The relationship with the brother and the family, and the sort of back and forth with, her lying to her family, almost like a secret identity, because her family is, these sort of well-to-do kind of elite upper class people, and they would really look down upon the fact that she's like living in this one-room apartment above a Euro shop. And, so she really dug it, and she just started drawing. And, when you something clicks and you feel it, it's an indescribable feeling. And just working with her was just amazing. So we had thought about pitching it to multiple sources, multiple publishers. And we ended up pitching it to Aftershock, and Aftershock ended up taking it. That, I can only say so much, but that obviously turned into a situation. But the book got out, and we had a really good time writing it. And And yeah, I mean, Van was great to write with, and Nikkei, obviously, I mean, just the work speaks for itself.
So had you worked with Van prior on anything,
Yeah.
or is just you had known him, or and just talked to him,
We
or I
had
mean,
met
like knew him in terms of like industry? No.
we had met a few times at San Diego. Like
Okay.
I would go by the DC booth,
Mhm.
to say hi to some people, and sometimes he would be there. And we had met a few times then, just handshake, hi, how's it going? Or if we were, going out to like a group dinner, he might be part of it. But I had never actually worked directly with him. I'd never had more than like just a sort of passing conversation. Um, but yeah, I mean, when we really sat down and started working on this, he's a really, I mean, he's a terrific writer and he's a
Yeah.
good person, and and he just sold his book Godfall, so
Mhm.
God bless for that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was a really great experience.
What was the specific writing like mechanics like in terms of formulating ideas and then into like actually a script that you would send off to a Neke? Like, is was it a matter of you guys just kind of brainstorming and getting ideas down, and then like how does that go from there to specific dialogue and paneling? I'm just curious how it works with co-writers in terms of like how does it actually go from ideas and story that you're making to like an actual script that goes to an artist?
Well, Van and I have very similar process of
Okay.
sort of outlining the basics and then, going macro to micro. So like we had already figured out what we wanted that first arc to be. And initially it was going to be a 5-issue series, but Aftershock had made it 4 issues. So we sort of had to pivot a little bit and move things around, because instead of 5 issues at 20 pages, it was going to be 4 issues at, I believe, 24 or 26 pages.
Yeah.
So you sort of had to shift some story
Mhm.
beats.
Yeah, you can't end your
Exactly.
issues and say, yeah, your cliffhangers are in different spots now, even if you're
Exactly.
telling the same story. Yeah, that's
Exactly. So
interesting.
so we had to shift stuff, but we had already, sat down and worked out a basic outline. And then in our discussions with Anike in terms of like, would you like to come onto this project? We were brainstorming stuff and sort of expanding that outline and then saying, okay, where are our breaks? This is what the story's going to be top to bottom. Where's our chapter breaks, our issue breaks? And we went through and like, this would be a cool thing. Oh, we want to do this, but maybe we do this in a flashback, that kind of thing. The idea in issue number 3 of doing the old school, turning
Yeah,
the book to the
the
side,
like the
the
newspaper
old
strip
school
kind of. Yeah,
newspaper,
yeah.
that was on a Nikkei. She came up with that idea,
Oh,
and it looked so great.
that's incredible when you
And
have that kind of visual. I don't want to say gag, but yeah, that visual premise there was so great, so
it
great.
reminded me of like Steranko on Nick Fury, where you would have to like turn
Hmm.
the book to
Yeah,
read and stuff, and stuff like that. Like that's just something where when you have such a great design sense like she does, like that really just worked so well. Um, so we had already plotted that out and everything, and then we would sort of send that off to Aftershock, and then we reworked everything to make it 4 issues. And then what would happen is Vanna and I would sort of break up the script into sequences.
okay.
And we'd say, okay, so this sequence is going to be Sacha and Joe, and this sequence is going to be with the parents, and this sequence, and this sequence is going to be with Jen and everything. And we just sort of broke it up that way and just said, okay, you take this, I take this, and vice versa. And we each sort of wrote part of the script.
Oh,
And then we would come together and make sure that each of those sequences that we were writing would naturally lead into, you know. And it's kind of like if you were painting straight lines, but you wanted it to be a gradient, you each paint your straight line and then you find a nice blend
in the middle.
in the
Yeah.
middle.
Oh, that's
And that's how basically we did it. I think it was only, I think I want to say it was either issue 3 or issue 4 that we actually just broke it in half and was like, you take the first half, I take the back half. Um, and I think that's like the only issue where we actually did that. But otherwise, it's like I would be writing, pages 1 through 4,
yeah.
and then pages like 9, 10, 11, 12, and then like 23 and 24, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
and then we would just sort of coalesce everything. And then it would go to editorial, and they would obviously have, tweaks.
Mhm.
And then yeah, I mean, but it was pretty seamless. I mean, he's a good writer to work with. He's very personable, and Nick is phenomenal to work with. So it was a pretty seamless in terms of creating the book. It was pretty seamless.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, you mentioned earlier how it started with this idea of this faux comic, Lady Dick, and the idea of this of it being like this kind of hard-boiled detective noir kind of story. And I think one thing that Mike and I really love about Bylines and Blood is that it seems to have many genres mixed in there. At the heart of it, there is this, you have our character, you have Sacha, she's a private detective, former investigative journalist, and so there's this grounded kind of noir realism to it. But there are so many other aspects. Like at times, it's just kind of a straight up action book, like a brawler book. There's a thriller aspect, kind of murder mystery aspect. There's
obviously the sci-fi setting.
Yeah, there's the slight sci-fi aspect of it's our world, but slightly in the future. With the idea of this pandemic, and then the idea of the drones, and which are just kind of taking our world and elevating it 3 or 4 notches there. And that's just like the actual elements that make up the story, outside of the kind of the larger philosophical and societal commentary questions there. Is that just are those things that just evolved from you and Van and Neke kind of talking, and all of a sudden this idea that starts from like, what if it was just kind of a hard-boiled lady detective, into just a much larger world? Were these elements that you were thinking of just kind of kept piling onto as you guys were discussing the story, or were these things that like you thought it'd be kind of cool if we had these things from the beginning? It just kind of build.
We wanted to set it in the future, because for a couple of reasons. One, because it's when you set a story into the future, it gives you a lot more leeway.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can create technology, or you can advance technology, and nobody could say that that's not what it's going to be. When you set a story in the past, or you set a story in the present day, it's really easy for people to start picking things apart. And people pick things apart. I mean,
yeah.
I do it too.
Yeah.
So we set it into the future so we would have a little bit of wiggle room. But in terms of the look of the future, we had all discussed about, if you look at the concept art by Sid Mead for Blade Runner, for the first Blade Runner, and you look at that concept art, if you look at concept art from someone like Ralph McQuarrie, and you look at just architecturally, this, the terrible weather. I mean, it's always raining in Blade Runner.
Always, yes. Always.
And how the atmosphere is always smoky, but there's always these pops of color, of these like random neon pops.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like Neo Tokyo on steroids, and then Nikkei had a lot to do with the design of the environment. Like I want to say, I think it's issue 2. No, it might be issue 3 when Sacha is chasing down the assassin. She's running through a skate park.
Yes. Yeah.
That was Nikkei was like, I'm just gonna put a skateboard park there. I'm like,
that,
cool.
that wasn't written. It was just like a chase scene.
It's just chasing down the street. Okay, well, they're gonna go through a skate park, so we can do something cool with that. All right, go for it. I mean, and obviously it looks great. We knew that we wanted to deal with ideas of what is truth, because this is post 2016 in the US. And, and it's not just the US. I mean, around the world, there are sort of authoritarian regimes that are rising and such. So we knew that we wanted to do something about post-truth, because that phrase, post-fact, or your facts, or, alternative facts.
And
things like that. So we wanted to do something with that. But in terms of like the philosophy quotes that were in it, that was basically just, Jen is one of those people who thinks he's a lot smarter than everybody else, but a lot of it is just smoke and mirrors and, just straight up BS. And
well, I took the bait, right? I was like, I sent you like our interview questions in advance, and I was like, I studied philosophy as an undergrad, and I took the bait. So I was
Yeah,
like, I had like a bunch
I
of
think I
questions teed
dropped
up for
out
you.
of Intro to Philosophy in like the first or second week of the class. I
But you
was just
said you
like,
got through Republic, right?
no, Republic I read on my own.
Oh, okay. Uh, I was like, this is probably really derivative, and any other philosophy nerds listening would. But basically, since Republic, everyone's just been riffing on that, so
Yeah.
you're fine.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so there are certain books I don't read a lot. And I was recently diagnosed with dyslexia. And I'm like, wow, that makes a whole lot of sense as to why I didn't read a lot as a
Answers a
child.
lot of questions. Yeah, doesn't it?
Answers so many questions, being diagnosed at like 47. Um, and so there are certain books that I'm like are books that you put on your resume. So Crime and Punishment, I read,
Hmm.
and I'm going to read War and Peace someday before I die. But Republic is one of those books that you put on your resume that you've read.
Right.
And so it took me over a year, but I finally got through it. And yeah, so I read Republic, and it basically just boils down to there is no perfect society because every time you think you make a perfect society, everything becomes hypocritical. So,
Yeah.
but that's basically Republic, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, and it's like,
I mean, that's a super oversimplification.
no, no. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he would say, well, the Greeks in general would say like, there is like somewhere in an immaterial state in the clouds, there's a perfect form of everything.
Yeah.
But anytime we try to bring it down, we inherently corrupt it. So
Yeah,
it's
because
just a matter of
humans
which
are trash.
direction you're going to skew.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Humans are trash, and
Yeah.
we ruin
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they would say the material world is trash, and then
Yeah.
you're really getting to Platonism. But,
Yeah.
well, I thought it was. I'm still going to take the bait because I still thought it was really interesting. So, I mean, first of all, you had a great mix of philosophers in here,
I
and you
Googled
had.
most of the
I
either
know, but it's
Dan
great.
probably knew them. I was just
But it
Googling
works, right? It's like functionally, it's like it doesn't matter how you got there. The fact that you've stitched these things together into an original piece, an original thought, it works. And I think that's the bigger idea. And first of all, a villain quoting Nietzsche is like perfect.
It's so Bond villain. It
It,
really
know.
it is.
he was very Bond
I was
villain.
gonna say that there's a lot of Bond villain in him, from the overly performative aspect of it, to the definitely thinking I'm smarter than not everybody, that I'm playing everybody here, that there's no one who can outsmart me. Yeah, there's big Bond villain energy with Jen, definitely.
To the eye on the forehead.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but I also thought what was interesting about him, and this is going off script a little bit, is that he also has this sense of like kind of trying to be a megalomaniacal, like controlling dictator while also playing the victim card,
Yes.
Yeah.
which is
Which is very Trump.
not unheard of, right? Yes.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
I was like, where have I heard that before?
Oh
and,
wait,
and
that's
this was during 2019, so we
Yeah.
had heard witch hunts and all that other
Mhm,
stuff.
mhm.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh
yeah.
yeah. But it is interesting that it seems like the whole book to me is a quest for truth, and even if it's just one person's quest for truth, her insistence that it matters is really the defining feature of her character for me, which is like she's got that journalism in there in the background. So it's like, yeah, she's not going to let go until she finds the facts. She wants to grapple with that, but there's a personal tie to it as well. But ultimately, when he starts waxing philosophical on her at the end, she's just like, I don't care. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't care. Smash the glass. I don't want to weigh out. I like, this is, someone who violates the truth like this cannot stand. And I'm reluctant to call her. I certainly wouldn't call her a hero, but I don't think I would call her the anti-hero. I think she's more heroic than anti-hero, right?
She has heroic traits,
Mhm. Yeah.
but
Right.
she would be the first person to say I'm not a hero. If anything, she would say, I'm just trying to make something right.
Yes.
You know?
Okay.
or
I think she's very much she falls under the vigilante idea, right?
yes,
Where that she is seeking truth, and in this specific case, she's seeking justice for her friend and mentor, outside of whatever bounds of anything else, and that she wants to know for herself. She wants to know the truth. She wants to get justice slash vengeance, I guess, whatever you want to call it. And yeah,
yeah.
it's very much that is your very stereotypical vigilante role. And we often think of vigilantes as anti-heroes, quote unquote. But yeah, I don't know that there is a streak to her of just, yeah, she just wants to do, well, she doesn't want to do what's right so much as she just wants to find out. She wants to uncover what's right, and by any means necessary. So yeah, there are some heroic aspects because there's still that investigative journalism part of her, and then there's the anti-hero parts, which is the beating someone with a hammer part of her personality.
That
You
actually,
know,
the hammer, I will tell you,
which
the
is
hammer
brutal. Like, when you think
came
like,
from, that was Nikki's idea. There
oh,
was a film that she had recently seen at the time where the person carried a hammer.
was it
And there
Old
was
Boy?
something that she really liked about just like the curvature of the hammer, the shape of the hammer, the silhouette of that of the hammer. And she's like, wouldn't it be awesome if, yeah, she carries a gun, but wouldn't it be awesome if she also carried a hammer? I'm like, fuck it, do it.
Oh, okay. So I have to
Hammer's
ask then if
awesome.
that was your line, because I did laugh out loud when she had to go to the fancy party. She's wearing a dress and was thinking to herself, I wish I at least had my hammer. And I was like, who in the world, who in the world is thinking like, oh man, I wish I had a hammer at this gala?
That outfit, that was based on, there was a film with Blake Lively in it where she is actually the villain, and she kind of like kidnaps herself, almost does like a Gone Girl kind of thing. And there's an outfit that Blake Lively wears in that film that's like a tux
Yeah.
that I thought was just so stunning. And I said, Anike, do you think there's any way that you can like Sachiify this? And that just like tall panel of her there with the drink. And I mean, the other thing that I think is so cool about this is that there are moments where somebody would be like, oh, that's gratuitous because it's nudity, or it's, like there's that scene where Sacha's literally in her underwear and she's just sort of splayed out on the couch.
Yeah, getting
and,
bandaged
and
up. Yeah.
and she's being tended to. There's nothing sexual about that, seeing all that skin. It's not it's
Right.
the tone, the way it's drawn. Yes, you're seeing a woman with a lot of skin, but there's nothing sexualized about that. And even that moment where we see her at the fancy party, there's something attractive about it, but that she's not being sexualized. And I think that we didn't want it to be like, oh, here's, Lady Sam Spade, and she's like super sexy and she's sleeping with everybody. We didn't want to go that route. At the same time, we didn't want to do what a lot of comics would have done, which is, I'm going to write a strong female character, so I'm basically just going to write a male character, but
Right.
who happens to be in a female's body. So we wanted to find a nice balance. And I'll be honest, the title was originally supposed to be Lady Dick, was supposed to be the title of the book. And we fought tooth and nail to get that. And there was a disagreement at Aftershock, and we figured, okay, fine, we'll come up with a new title, which is where Bylines and Blood came in. But the fight that Anike and I were really pushing for is this fact that as women, that is something to be feared. The authoritative physicality of a male is something to be feared. And just like how women have sort of taken back the word bitch, we wanted it to be like that. We're taking that word dick, we're taking that and saying, this doesn't scare us. Your threats don't scare us. Your threats don't scare me, Sacha. Your threats don't scare me. And it's not to say that Sacha doesn't have moments of fear in the book. She absolutely does. Yeah. But she still pursues despite all of that. And so when we were sort of having disagreements with Aftershock about it, it came down to, okay, so let's do that sequence of the old school comic strip to explain why her name is Lady Dick, to
Lady Dick,
explain
sure. Yeah.
where that came from. Um, and that sort of calmed, inflamed nerves for some people.
Did they not know? Was that unaware that the term for the slang term for detective, a PI, was a dick? Like was
No,
was that?
well, they knew that.
Okay.
I think they were being hyper cautious, and that's fine.
Okay.
I get
Yeah.
it. They are thinking more. They're thinking more litigiously than we are, whereas we are thinking more creatively. Like, what is
Sure.
the purity of the creative
Mhm.
idea? And we, as a creative team, that's where our hearts and mindsets were, and theirs was more about offending people
Yeah.
and such. I didn't think it was offensive. Enike didn't think it was offensive. Van didn't think it was offensive, but some people would have taken it offensively. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So then it's, Lady Dick
Yeah.
Investigations, and that's the
Mhm.
name of her company, and
Mhm.
that's who she is.
Yeah. So it's
Right.
in the
And
book, but it's not the title of the book.
Yes.
It's kind of the trade-off. Sure.
yeah, and it's like they're probably thinking there are some comic shops that are not going to put this prominently on the wall if kids come in and the first thing they see is Lady Dick. So they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we want it to be up front. And it I think I understand both sides, but I would side with the creators and say, like, you just let them name it what they want to name it. But
Well, there are
as if
two
you don't
famous,
have a vested interest in selling books as well.
true. There are two very famous detectives that we homage. So the yellow,
Yep.
there's a yellow aspect to a lot of what Sacha's wearing.
And that was that dress. That was that tux was yellow.
Yes,
Well,
the
but also the
yellow.
lining of her
The
trench
lining
coat.
of her coat.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
for Dick Tracy.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then that blue is for the spirit.
Oh, okay. I didn't clock that one. The yellow, because the yellow trench coat jumps out, but that makes sense.
Yeah,
The spirit being in blue.
that purplish, bluish, gray, like that sort of mix of purple, blue, and gray. It was for spirit. Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
that's great.
Okay.
That's great.
I stopped once I saw the yellow. I stopped looking for clues and Easter eggs. I was like,
Yeah.
yellow, got it,
That's Dick
and
Tracy, yeah.
moved on. So I didn't make anything of the.
Also, yellow is Nike's favorite color, so she
Oh,
was looking
more
for a way
so.
to bring it in
Yeah.
anyway. So yeah.
Sure.
I think that Blake Lively movie was A Simple Favor.
Yes, A Simple Favor. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, with Anna Kendrick.
Anna Kendrick. Yes.
And I just thought, I think they're making a sequel. It just got announced. Like I think I read the headline literally yesterday, which is why that movie is in my mind when you said that in terms of what that outfit, that gala outfit looks like. I don't know why that was in my brain.
I'm
right
trying
there.
to think how they would make a sequel, but okay.
Yeah, I'm not really certain. But
Money.
No spoilers.
Money is how.
yeah, well, yeah, the money is why. I don't know, but that's the how. Yeah,
It's
So,
both how and why.
Yeah.
Money answers so many questions
It
in
really
America.
does.
That
But
is very true.
speaking of money, I did want to talk about this with the character because I think there's been you're pretty well steeped in superheroes, and I think in the last 10 years, a lot of comic fans have kind of pushed back against that notion of kind of the righteous billionaire, whether it's, Bruce Wayne or Tony Stark or whatever. It's like you can't actually be like a righteous, just person and possess that quantity of wealth. And so I thought it was an interesting texture that Sachi comes from wealth and affluence. We don't really know the scale of it, but it's like I get the impression she wouldn't really need to work if she didn't want to, and could have a pretty comfortable life. And she doesn't even act as if she has that as a safety net. She completely eschews it and acts from a place of like impoverished independence. And I was like, this is a different direction.
Yeah, she views the wealth of her family. And she does take advantage of it though, because I mean she does turn around and she hops by her parents' house and she gets a free meal and kind of thing. So
I thought you were going to say she went to the hospital and got care, and I was like, only in America would that be a flex for money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because her mother's, one of the main doctors in the hospital.
Head of surgery one that. Yeah.
But basically it's there's she, if you haven't noticed, is searching for her most authentic life. And we talk about this all the time on social media, living an authentic life. And we all know that it's just all curated and everything.
Right.
So, but she truly is trying to live an authentic life and finds that the wealth that she came from is antithetical to that. You know, the wealth that she came from is not going to allow her to, it basically, even in her conscience, allow her to live that kind of life. Her family has wealth, and it certainly helps her younger brother who's disabled. And you know, if the family didn't have wealth, who knows what would have happened to the younger brother, considering his disability. So we wanted to juxtapose this idea of the righteous crusader, but she's seen both sides of it.
Yeah.
You know, there's two sort of parallels that I take. One is, if you've ever seen the movie Overboard, where, you know, she grows up with everything and then she has nothing and sort of learns her lesson. Or even like Thor, when he gets, you know, the first Thor, when he gets kicked out and he's got to learn his lesson. She purposefully left to learn her lesson. The other thing is, I always joke, like, for my wedding, my grandmother, you know, I mean, my family doesn't have a lot of money, but my grandmother, you know, is an immigrant and has this notion of like what your wedding should be, what an American wedding should be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think she's been watching a little too much reality TV. But she basically said to me, like, I'll get a horse-drawn carriage if you want a horse-drawn carriage for your wedding. Here's the catch, though. I get to choose your dress, your hair, your makeup, like everything from what you wear on your head to the color of your toenails, you know? And I was like, wow, we did soup to nuts. Our wedding, including my dress, his tux, everything, soup to nuts. Our wedding was like $7,000, if that. But we did it our way, and we scraped and we scrimped and we did it, and we did it our way. And I know $7,000 is still a lot of money. I know, because we saved our asses for it. But the point was kind of like Satya's attitude of, yeah, I could have a nice apartment and still work in this, you know, terrible neighborhood, but that wouldn't be real. So
it wouldn't be mine.
It wouldn't be mine.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have my stamp and my signature on it. And that's kind of that attitude of, yeah, I'm going to live in a terrible apartment. It's going to smell like burnt gyro all day, which honestly isn't that bad.
Not the worst thing.
The amount of gyro that I wanted to eat when I was writing this book, I was like, that's all I want to do. And that's why we have that thing where he's like stuffing his face.
Yeah. Oh, the one scene I'm thinking of, I'm gonna miss the one there is, it's from his point of view where he's eating it and then the car pulls up.
Yes,
from the distance, it pulls up, the door opens, Satya gets thrown out, and the car drives away. But it's the same kind of static image of Joe in the front. That's a fantastic.
Yeah, and he's just like,
yeah. Then he looks over and is like, oh, damn it, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a fantastic sequence. Fantastic
the shirt
sequence,
that he's wearing, there's a Nikkei had drawn something on the shirt, but it was an IP, and so they were like, oh, well, we can't use that, you know, whatever. So I gave a Nikkei an image of my cat that I did the sort of like split screen Obama Hope thing, but it's fluff.
Yeah.
Yes. And then Nikkei put that on his shirt.
Okay, yeah, you could only see, you can see kind of the two-tone left to right color and
like
a little bit,
and just the ears like this, just the ears.
Yeah. You can that's all you can pretty much see there. Yeah, but that's a fantastic, that's a sequence like that. I absolutely love. So was that something that was scripted in, like those kind of panels?
Well, we talked. I mean, we did. Van and I had wrote full scripts, but I mean, Nikkei had a lot of leeway. And this is how I usually, I mean, if I'm doing indie books, I mean, obviously IP, you have an editor who has, you know, deals with, you know, the big boss and the giant conglomerate they're working for. So they have their sort of own intentions of, this book needs to sell this character, or this book needs to, you know, push this narrative or whatever. And I get that. But when it comes to indie work, my mantra basically with the artists is, look, we're telling a story. There's specific information on each one of these pages as it unfolds. As long as the information is still conveyed to the audience, to the reader, then if I wrote 5 panels and you can convey the same information in 4, do it in 4. If you want 6, do it in 6. I believe that that sequence was written as like, we might have even put 4 panels or whatever, but just a sequence of the same framing where we're focused on Joe eating. And he's, stuffing his face, looking at his phone, not paying attention. And over his shoulder, because he's at the window of the restaurant, restaurants with the big glass windows. Over his shoulder, we then see the car pull up, throw Satcha out, and like a sack of potatoes kind of thing. And then the page turn is him running out, seeing her, and she's, got the hell beat out of her.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many panels we actually wrote for that, but Enike did those 6 panels, and it was perfect because you have the establishing shot of Joe. You have Joe eating in a different position, somewhat a different position. And you see the car coming into frame. You see the car completely in frame, the door opening up a little. I mean, it's almost like a perfect storyboard of an animated sequence.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so there's a pacing to, is it 4 panels, is it 6 panels? Do you do a 9 panel? Do you do a 12? It's all, I guess that just comes with feel of, I'm assuming from on both sides in terms of what the artist is comfortable with and what they feel that timing is, because you can draw that out and have it overly done, and maybe that's the effect you want to try to go for. You're trying to make it seem, you're trying to get that point across, or you can have it very quickly where you could do that in like 3 panels, like, top, middle, bottom, where there's nothing there, the car is there, and then she's on the ground. There's ways to do that. It's all about what pacing feels right. So I think that's
also, though, I think doing the 6, I think it also helped us establish Joe a little bit more and establish him and his personality and how, I mean, he's a bit of a stoner.
Yeah.
So, his sort of obliviousness in that whole thing, because you're hearing tires screech, but you're not really paying attention.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's, oh my God, my friend was just thrown out of a moving car,
Well, yeah, but I think you're right about Joe. We see who he is. We see how he interacts with the world, but then Satcha's in trouble. She's thrown out there, like he jumps in and helps. And we see that earlier too, I guess, from that first fight with the invisible assassin, which also has this great 9-panel grid with Satcha in the middle as she's turning and trying to fire at where she thinks the assassin is.
That's straight Sienkiewicz.
Yeah, which is that's a glorious panel. I love the use of you can do something like that in so many different ways, but having it broken up in 9 panels, but have it be one image and you follow her around, I think something like that is so cool. But we after that we see, we see the kind of person that Joe is. Yes, he's a bit of a stoner. Whatever however good or not good he is as his job as an accountant, you see that he does care. Yeah. And so you see that through that character is revealed through those moments there. But yeah, that's those two sequences. I think that 9-panel sequence with Satcha and trying to fire at the assassin,
shooting.
And then that 6-panel of Joe when she gets thrown out of the car are 2 that really did stand out to me. That I think storytelling wise, pacing wise, I love stuff like that you get in comics that you really can't get. Like it's the things that's unique to the sequential art storytelling, the comic medium, that those kinds of feelings when you see it on a static page, you can't get in prose or in motion picture or things like that.
That 9-panel page is from a Doug Munch, Bill Sienkiewicz book where I love Moon Knight, where Moon Knight is fighting Midnight Man, and it has Moon Knight jumping through everything. And I put that in the script, and I gave that to Enike to reference, and I believe it made it in the trim, but at the bottom of that page, in the file, I believe it meant there's a little heart and it says for Sienkiewicz.
There's a little homage bit. Hold on, let me see that. Do you have that up, Mike? Do you see that?
I do. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I can share my screen, but it's going to be an audio medium, so yeah. I feel like
It was there in the digital file.
Yep,
I believe
yep,
it is there. I believe it made it in the trim.
yeah. I pulled up the trade right here. Yep, it makes it there. I had not noticed that. I had
Yeah, a
not
little
noticed that
heart
person.
instead of
Yeah,
cabbage. Yeah.
that's great. That's fantastic. Oh, that's such a great page. I love that so much.
Yeah, we can get carried away with paneling. I
We
also
can't.
I just well, I think I can't remember what book that was. It's probably The Seeds, where David Aja just went the most creative I've ever seen anyone go with storytelling through sheer paneling alone.
Yeah.
Um, but we've got limited time left and a few other things to talk about. By the way, you mentioned Moon Knight, and let me just say that the Moon Knight short that you did in like it could be a 10-minute short film of they just get this cab driver who's muttering to himself, and then all of a sudden it's perfect. It was so much fun.
My dad drove a cab in New York in the early 80s. So Jake has always been my favorite I mean,
the
I love
personas.
Moon Knight. I love Mark Spector. We did the What If
Mhm.
based off of Mark Spector Moon Knight #3. Sal Valuto and Chuck Dixon did that issue. And Edgar Salazar drew it when we did that. But I've always had a love for Jake. Jake's always had a special place in my heart.
Yeah, it definitely shines through there because he's the hero of that Moon Knight story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Jake in control the whole time, right? He's like
Yes, it's Jake
conversing,
the
but it's
entire
Jake.
time.
It's all Jake. Which I've read a fair number of Moon Knight books. I started with Lemire and then I went back to the beginning, and Jake does not get the like top billing very often.
No. No, in the early books, Stephen usually does because Stephen was the one who was in the relationship um with Marlene, and then in some later ones, in the more 2010s, 2000 like 2012, 2015, they turned Jake into this like hyper psychopath, um, which I was not a fan of. So I mean, when we got the assignment, it was basically, make a perennial story. So this is something that you can
Just
fit in
drop
any
anywhere. Yeah,
timeline.
Yeah.
yeah.
And when uh, David Lopez was assigned to it, I was like, wait, is this the same David Lopez that, did Captain Marvel and,
Oh, yeah.
all new Wolverine? And yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll work with him. No, he did a phenomenal job, and he was so great to work with. He really was. I mean, he understands that it's a static page, but he also can give motion to things and make things feel frenetic and feel, hyper, and you can almost hear the music when you're reading it. Almost
Yeah.
hear like the strings tightening and tightening and tightening as they go up, kind of thing, and sort of feel the tension. He really it was great to work with. I say this all the time. I am beyond lucky for the artists that I either work with on independent projects or have been assigned. I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches, the phenomenal talents that I've had the opportunity to work with.
Yeah, I will say I thought on the opening page of that, the first time I read it, I thought you had put in the something something as your way of censoring yourself for a mass audience, and then I was like, oh no, this is being translated, and they were like switching in and out of languages because I was like, man, she really wanted to drop profanities in every line of this little short story.
We had definitely I believe it is issue #2 of David Aja and Matt Fraction's Hawkeye run, where they're going to the where Hawkeye and Kate and Clint are going to the circus of crime, and they see, and it says something 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 French,
Yeah.
or something 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 whatever. And so I wanted to allude to the Russian mob, because in Brooklyn there is, like, I'm not saying the Russian mob is in Brooklyn, please don't come after me. But it is possibly an area where there is influence by a particular ethnic group. There's a
Yeah, sure.
Little Odessa. You go to Brighton Beach and it's called Little Odessa. I mean,
Right.
Two
Yeah.
and two. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yeah, I follow with that and great comp to the like that just transcendent run from Matt Fraction and David on Hawkeye. Which, of course, my favorite issue is, the silent issue from the dog's perspective.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a sucker for that and really into all things pet related, and it's just a great time to be a comic reader right now being a cat. Everybody's doing cat books.
I can neither confirm nor deny that there will be a cat coming in.
There's a particular Easter egg on screen that was making me want to ask about it, but I was like,
Go for it.
I was like, well, just like you do have cat ears at the moment.
I do. It's a headband that Liana gave me when I
nice.
saw them at Lexington Comic Con, which is where we met.
Mhm.
And just after or just before Lexington Comic Con, we lost one of our cats, our old lady, Kata. And so Liana got these for me because Kata was a black and white tuxie. And when they were shopping, they said, "Oh my God, this totally reminded me of Kata." And Liana had the fortune to meet the crusty old lady, and everything. So yeah, I can neither confirm nor deny that in a book coming out soon, there may or may not be a crusty old lady cat that may or may not
be a black and white tuxie.
I just want you to know how much power you have over my comic budget based on the number of variants you choose to release with a cat on it.
Don't say that.
Like,
don't say that.
I'm trusting you. Like, don't hurt me too bad.
No, I mean, are you talking about variant covers?
Yeah, if there's like a bunch of cat variants, I'm gonna have them all. I have 3 cats, and that's because my wife like put her foot down. Like, I would have a Hemingway number of cats.
I have a colony of 9 cats that come in and out of my yard. Outdoor.
Well, if we count outdoor, yeah, there's like 20 to 30 that live like on my porch and around in the area.
Yeah.
But the 3 that live inside with us and are as domesticated as cats ever get, it's capped at 3. And my first one that we got right after we got married is we got him when he was a little tiny kitten, but he is a tuxedo. So yeah, nothing melts my heart faster than a grumpy tuxedo.
Yeah, she was well, when they go deaf and they start talking, their meows are just bizarre. Yeah, she had no teeth, and we got her when she was 15, and she was with us for about 2.5 years. She was 18 and she passed. She was with us for about 2.5 years, but she was just like cranky old lady, and she was the best. And she had the loudest purrs. We have Simon, who's 14 now, and we got him when he was 6. And he's just, a big old, he basically looks like a white cat who walked underneath a table that just dropped some gray paint on him. Because he's like white from the, all on the front. And then on his back, he's just got these like random blotches of gray that just sort of dropped on him.
I think it's a Rorschach test, like cats like that. Yeah,
it might be, but his whole butt and tail is gray. So when he sits down and loaf, if you go behind him, it looks like an elephant.
That we have an elephant butt. Yeah, I'm glad this is what I'm using the podcast on. Alex is horrified. Yeah,
I'm not a pet person. It's all good though. It's fine. It's totally good. People who love cats and dogs. There are many of them out there. I have nothing against either of them, except that all of them make me sneeze like anything else. I'm allergic.
But you have a reason then. I mean,
yeah, I'm allergic. When we would record this podcast in person, sometimes if I didn't take some sort of allergy medication before going to Mike's house, we would get about 15, 20 minutes in and I would just start feeling it. Like the eyes would just start watering, and it's like, just don't sneeze 14 times into the microphone, so if there weren't precautionary measures, they were tough. Yeah.
Fitz, who is our elephant butt, was trying to drink your vitamin water repeatedly.
The thing about
won't
being
eat
allergic,
cat treats, but he wants vitamin water.
The thing about being allergic to animals, cats and dogs, is that they apparently know, because they come up to you all the time. Like, they won't leave you alone.
Well, it's
you know.
because you're being withholding, and the cat's like, no, 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 that's my thing.
Yeah, I guess maybe
Yeah.
so. But yeah, I got nothing against them other than I wish they didn't make me sneeze. That'd be the big thing. So,
All
but
right. Well, Erica, we want to respect your time. Um, if you have more time, we have more questions, but I definitely want to get to
I can give you like another 20,
okay,
15, 20.
okay. Alex, you want to give one more
sure. Well,
question? Choose your you have two left on your list.
we talked a little because we've talked about Moon Knight and all that stuff. So we know that outside of your creator and work, you've done a lot of work with Marvel and a lot of work you've done recently with Marvel. So I am real quickly, I'm curious how, the books I think you'd be associated with. We think about Daredevil, Elektra. You just did Gang War there. You had Laura Kinney, young Laura Kinney, the Deadly Regenerator, X-23. The one that I think of though is Hallows Eve, which is not a character that you created. That was Zeb Wells and
That's
Ed
a Dark
McGinnis.
Horse.
What?
That's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
a Dark Horse character. Yeah.
But because she's a new character, a newish, yeah, brand new character in terms of her powers that was created for Dark Web, but so she has some appearances there, but all of her solo stories, whether it's her miniseries, a one shot, a Spider-Man annual one shot, you've kind of taken the reins or been given the reins to write this character. So what has it been like to take a character that is new to the canon, not one that you created for the canon, but one that, whatever voice she may have, whatever place she has in her kind of specific wider Spider-Man universe, what's it been like to take a character like that and really kind of run with it and have room to run and kind of develop who this person is outside of the context in which she was created, which was this crossover event, Dark Web.
Well, as Hallows Eve, she was created for Dark Web. She was originally created for Clone Conspiracy back in 94, 95.
Yeah.
It's been freeing to a certain extent because she didn't really have a voice, and to be able to sort of influence how she sounds. Language is very important to me, and cadence of speech is very important to me. And if I'm going to be writing a character, I want to read what that character sounded like most recently, especially if it's like a legacy character, like, writing Laura Kinney, X-23, because you don't want someone to read the book and be like, that's not how this character sounds.
Yeah.
And everybody sort of has their own headcanon, but there's a generally accepted way that a certain character speaks. And, when I was writing Hallows Eve, I was reading, what Zeb had written and, in the beginning of the Beyond story, how he was writing her as Janine.
Mm-hmm.
And then how he was writing her as Hallows Eve, which was, I think, Amazing Spider-Man number 14 is when she
that sounds right. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So it was interesting to see that and to see what little bit she'd already been given, and then to be able to expand on that. And it is freeing, but at the same time, it's like there are constraints, obviously, because you're dealing with IP, and there's certain things that the publisher wants to push, and I get that, like 100%. But it was cool to be able to say, that's not how she would sound to me, and to be kind of an authority on that, kind of not 100%, but kind
maybe
of.
not the authority, but you can at least
I'm an authority.
Yeah, you can assert. Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
you can assert an authority. So that's great. That's great.
Like Mike Dowling and I worked on Hallows Eve for the one shot, and we worked on Hallows Eve for the miniseries. And Mike's a phenomenal artist, and I may or may not be working with him on something else. We'll see. But Julian Shaw was the artist on the Amazing Spider-Man one shot annual. But Mike and I think, have worked with Hallows Eve more than anybody else so far. So although she's not ours, kind of an authority.
Yeah, you feel that I can say you feel some ownership in terms of if and when she shows up. It seems like that your voice and his art will be what you kind of see. So wonderful. I'll say wonderful character design though. The outfit, everything about it.
McGinnis, who
It
originally
invokes some of the things we know about Spider-Man, like obviously like a hobgoblin kind of thing or whatnot.
Yes.
It feels reminiscent of all of that, but yet it's still its own thing, and such a great power set. The idea of using the masks and getting those things, it's a very cool character, and I do like how they've kind of gone back in general and been like, we need to try to reframe or relook at Clone Conspiracy. You know, they've given Ben Riley things to do now with the Virginia and all that. That this idea of maybe not rehabilitating, but taking these characters from the past from a time that, like, I don't want to say universally derided in Spider-Man, but like pretty close to it, you know, and reworking.
Conspiracy really is the last Jedi of comics.
It's that or One More Day, right? In terms of Spider-Man, yeah. It's one of those two there.
But nobody argues about Reign.
That's true. Yeah, I know.
We should be arguing about Reign.
We really should. Honest. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, that is very, very true. Yeah. That is great to see. I have said I'm a big fan of that character. So when it comes back, as she reappears, I do hope to see more of your writing with her. So I guess finally, leading into what is just like you've given a little bit teases of maybe things you might be working on. I don't know if you can say anything more specific than that, but I know the one thing that you have coming out that will be out by the time this episode airs.
When does this episode air?
This is going to air
May 9th.
May 9th, yeah. So this will be aired. So the thing I know you have coming out, because it's been announced, and it'll be out by the time this is Rat City, which is part of the extended Spawn universe.
Yeah.
There was, I don't know how much big of a deal it is. You are the first woman to write a Spawn comic. I don't know how you feel about that either. As that being like the lead of the story or whatnot, but it is a factual. It is a factual nugget there. But you have Rat City coming out. Issue 1 will be out by the time this interview airs, and issue 2 will be out, I think, the following week after it comes out. So, just what can you say about working in the greater Spawn universe and getting to write in that world, that different sort of IP than working in a Marvel setting?
It is a different sort of IP because J. Carlos, who is the artist, visionary is a word that they will apply to him most definitely. He really is fantastic, and the designs and his interpretation of the scripts. Like, I will say this. So usually Spawn is written Marvel style, where a writer will give you sort of breakdowns, like pages 1 and 2, this is the scene, and it's just very, it's like maybe 3 pages with some dialogue dropped in, and then the artist will interpret that. Jay actually requested full script from me, so I do break down to panels, but he also knows that that's more guide than edict, basically. So he, so there, when I get pages back, sometimes it'll have an extra panel or a less panel or whatever. And that's fine. I mean, he's just as much a part of the creation of this character as I am. It's genuinely been a pleasure to work with Todd and Thomas and Yvette at Todd McFarlane Productions. I know that just sounds like a company line, but it really is very true. They are very generous in terms of what they allow us to do. They are very generous in terms of the time that they give us to create these stories, to craft these stories. There is nothing that we've put out there, with the exception of like, oh, this character might look a little too similar to that character. There's nothing that they've said no, emphatically no. I made a joke on another podcast the other day about how I was going to have Necroplasm animate the big T-Rex from the National History Museum in New York, and you'd have Spawn running down, Fifth Avenue battling a bony T-Rex. I made that as a joke, but then I wrote it down and I was like, that actually, I could find a way to put that in to make that work.
That's a good idea. I like that.
It's funny because I would probably, that might be the one thing that they'd be like, maybe not.
Yeah.
But no,
that's a bridge too far.
That's a bridge too far. But I mean, we are in the future again, and again that allows us some leeway in terms of technology. But it's funny because when Jay and I were talking about the environment, we actually used panels from Bylines as reference. You know, some of the Nikkei's panels from Byline
as what a future city might look like.
Yeah, as inspiration and such. And you know, and again, you know, the Blade Runner, the Cyberpunk, Altered Carbon, these are all sort of things that we've been pulling from in terms of visual reference and visual inspiration. But it's, I mean, I know that it is a big deal to some people that I'm the first woman to write Spawn.
Yeah.
I've never, ever, ever set out to be a good woman writer, a good lady writer, despite the Dire Straits song. I've just set out to be a good writer and to write stories that affect people, whether they hate them or they love them. That's what I want. I mean, the worst thing that I could ever hear from somebody is meh, you know, because then that means that anything that whatever I put out there didn't affect them. It didn't make them think. It didn't make them go, oh, wow. Or it didn't make them say, I'm going to throw this book across the room. Because either way, I mean, you're doing, that's your purpose. Is art's purpose in life is to elicit a response, an emotional response. And if there is no emotional response, then either the person is not understanding it or their interpretation is just eh. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have a reaction, good or bad. I've already seen comments saying, you know, they're ruining they in quotes, they're ruining everything and now they're going to ruin Spawn. And I saw one comment that I was genuinely, I had to stop myself from replying to. And one comment was, don't tell me why a woman should write Spawn. Tell me why you should write Spawn. And I thought that was very interesting. And I was very close to replying, but then I was like, I know it's a slippery slope. You reply once and then
and then that's you're lost.
Right.
In it.
Yeah. What you would be doing is investing time in a conversation.
Yeah.
Where the other person's primary commodity they deal in is an abundance of free time.
Yeah.
And your time is more precious.
But I will say this, if I had to answer that question, I would say, because Jay and I have a take on the character that was different, that was new, and that was interesting enough for Todd to want to incorporate that into the larger Spawn universe. That would be my answer.
And then it comes down, I think that comes down, a lot of it is like, this is Todd McFarlane's baby. So like, whatever comes out that has Spawn on it, it's going to be filtered through him. Yes. So if you're someone
there is no they ruining it. It's Todd, right?
If you're someone who claims to love Spawn and you live and die by Spawn, that means you live and die by what Todd McFarlane says this character is. So if he signs off on it, you really have no choice but to be like, okay, well, like, you know, if he's good with what we're putting out, with what Spawn is putting out, and you claim to be someone who loves this property, then like, how are you crapping on it before it comes out, other than you simply don't want to see what it is? You know, I
know that everything that I write isn't for everybody. I get
of course. Yeah. And I'm not saying they have to like it. Yeah. They're not, but this idea that capital T, they are ruining this character. And it's like, well, not like, it's been signed, like this book isn't coming out in a, you know, on its own. Like, it's being signed off on by everyone who makes Spawn. And if the take that you have, that you and De Carlos have, is interesting enough to make the person who created this thing say, yeah, I like that, let's go with it, then to me, as a fan of properties, like, well, if those people have signed off on it, then I have to see what this is, you know, because I love seeing a book that I like, that I like, when it gets spin-offs or whatnot, and they bring in other creators, either if I know them or not, if they're saying that this is someone who I want telling stories in my world, well, if I love that world already, then I want to see what those are. You know, I want to see what these other people bring to it. And to me, it's about that makes me excited to read stories versus just deciding like, well, no, you know, because she's a woman, I'm not going to read it, you know. But that's a barrier, that's something that I know that people in your position are in the industry, because that's just the nature of our world, unfortunately, in a lot of ways. That, I mean, there's a segment like that is always going to think that way.
at this point, I mean, I kind of take the tact of if I'm getting a check in the mail and Todd McFarlane's people have signed that check, then obviously I'm doing something right. Because Todd literally reads every single book that is about to come out. So I'll do a lettering pass. It'll get lettered, and I'm doing the lettering on Rat City as well. So
Letting your own book. Okay, cool.
I'm lettering my own book.
Yeah.
So I'll do the lettering pass, and I'll send the files off to Yvette and the production crew over at Todd McFarlane, and they'll put the book together. Todd will look over the PDF. He'll make some tweaks. And then I get a PDF after saying, hey, this is what Todd approved. And I'm like, okay, that works. And 98.7% of the original work that I put in is still there. So obviously it's not, if he just said, no, screw it, we're taking this out and taking that out, blah, 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 then obviously I'm like, okay, I need to rethink how this character is to therefore coalesce more with what he's trying to put out there. No, that's it. So, I mean, my whole thing is like, look, if Todd McFarlane's happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's his property. It's his character. It's his thing.
It's his baby.
Yeah. If he signs off on it, then it honestly, God, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of it. This is what's going out there. So, no, listen, so that'll be coming out by the time you're listening to this. Issue 1 of Rat City will already be out. Issue 2 will hit stands, I think, the week after this comes out. So you can look for that there. And then also you can look for that depending on when news announce. I may be referencing another book that you have coming out that has now been cut from this interview, but look for that one as well. Look for something else coming from.
You're making my editing job so much harder. Why would you do that?
I'm saying leave this part in where I reference a book that may or may not be.
Okay.
Yeah. There are other things coming out. Look for more things.
Well, this is what's going to be coming out around this time. So Rat City 1, Rat City 2, Darth Maul, Black, White, Red.
Yep.
Blood Hunters.
The anthology book, which is part of the overall Blood Hunt event over at Marvel. Big limelight event.
Black Widow Venomous.
What is
I've
that?
never heard of that.
It's getting. Sorry that I'm making your life more difficult,
Yeah.
Mike.
You're allowed to. Alex knows better.
So today is the 30th. On April 1st, they're going to be announcing Black Widow Venomous, and they're going to be announcing. Are they announcing? Oh, so they're going to be announcing Black Widow Venomous, and they're going to be announcing the fact that the anthology. I'm building a team in the anthology.
Okay.
So Hallows Eve will be on that team, and so will White Widow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it'll be Dagger. We already know about Dagger and Elsa Bloodstone. It'll be Hallows Eve and White Widow are the other 2 members of the team.
You're not working with Sarah Gailey, are you?
No, I'm not writing with Sarah Gailey. Although,
okay.
Although I have lettered books that Sarah Gailey has written.
Okay. Yeah. We're big Sarah Gailey fans, and I think they were our most recent guest. That's not true.
No.
The most recent one that's out.
Okay.
No. Yeah. Okay. So that this is being announced
on April 1st.
April Fool's Day.
So it'll be out. But okay.
Nothing misleading about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So in May we've got Blood Hunters, and in June we've got Venomous from Black Widow Venomous and Darth Maul, and we're going to continue with Blood Hunters throughout. Rat City is going to be a monthly book. We're doing at least 30 issues. So,
yeah, excellent. All right. So there's plenty of stuff coming out, including the stuff that we may or may not be able to talk about, and we haven't already talked about when you're listening to this here. So even if that gets cut,
Mike with the editing button.
Yeah. Even if that gets cut, there's still a ton of stuff coming out.
I'll do an edit this weekend,
yeah.
And then I'll have to re-listen to it like early May to see if there's needs to be more trimmed out or
I'll keep an eye on the solicitations and see when things are released. I mean, solicitations usually come out like the 3rd week of the month. So yeah, by end of April, we'll have a sense of what's coming out by then.
Okay, good deal.
Right.
aside from purchasing your books, are there other ways that you like fans to support you? Do you have Patreon, Substack, newsletter, private commissions, merch, any of that stuff?
On my website, Erica Schultz Writes, WRITES.com /shop. I've got books that you can purchase, and I also have I know it's pronounced coffee, but it's spelled KOFI, so I say Ko-fi, which I know everybody laughs at me, but whatever. I'm weird. And I do weaving. And so I weave, like, you can use things for like bracelets or bookmarks, and I have like tons that I've worn and everything. So I do weaving, and I have that up on that site. So you can always just go and be like, here's $2 to buy a coffee kind of thing. But it's Ko-fi or coffee .com / Erica Schultz 42. On Twitter, I'm Erica Schultz 42. On Blue Sky, I'm Erica Schultz 42. On Instagram, I'm Erica Schultz Writes, WRITES. And yeah.
Great. And I love any website that is organized by stuff and things.
Yes. Yeah.
We will have all those links in the episode description, as well as on the episode page on our website. And for people that are listening, I think that's easy enough to find. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This was a blast.
So great to hear from you. Really loved this book, all your work, but Bylines and Blood felt like it's something really, really special. Just like almost like you were in my brain designing for me, like all the things I read, which are like, mystery noir, sci-fi, action, and you were like, just put it all in a crock pot and let it marinate. Yeah. And
with a sprinkle of philosophy on top there, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, this was a blast, and we know it's something that you can't really talk about, but we hope that maybe in the future there's a chance that these stories and these characters can exist in some other form down the line. Something that I know we hope for as readers, and I know you as well as creator. But Erica, thank you so much. This was an absolute blast, and absolute joy.
Thank you.
Thank you.